Welcome to I Heart Geek.
And welcome to another episode of I Heart Geek. Woo! This is a life-changing episode for all of us. Maybe not. This is just things that change our lives, but not necessarily, it's not going to change our lives. It might, because I know it's going to change Chris Giorgetti's life. I'm Dub. I'm here with Chris Giorgetti. I'm here with Sutomi, and I'm here with Miss Geeky Paige. How are y'all doing today?
Hi, guys. What's up?
This podcast is partially brought to you in part by coffee. I drink it because I need it. Coffee. Available on Giorgetti on Ice.
And for those of you who are listening and not watching, both Chris and I happen to have Disney mugs today.
Yes.
We are going to discuss a lot of Disney today. Today we are discussing literally entertainment that has changed the world, that has changed our lives, and then we're just kind of going to discuss a little bit on there. And I think there is, as I was writing the script, holy crap, there is a lot of stuff that really means a lot to us, which explains why we're all geeks, I think. Yeah. Today's show is brought to you by the Buggles, reminding you the video killed the radio star, and then something else will kill the video star. I think the internet did. The YouTube killed the internet, the video star. No,
It's the internet killed the radio star.
The internet killed the radio industry. Just saying. Okay, so we are talking about the panel now, real quick, and then we'll be done with the business side. Go down, and if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the like, hit the subscribe, comment, and if you're not on YouTube, go to any of our other social medias, which include TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and I know we have one more. Everything.
All the apps.
Internet things.
All the apps.
Yes.
Patreon.
Yes, get more content from us. Okay. So what we want to talk about today is the things that changed society or us personally as far as entertainment. This is things that changed the actions of society in general. This is things that change what we want to do, what we want to be, and how things moved, I guess, or it changed the industry in general. We're all over the place on this one. So as far as when we talk about something that has changed society in general, what do you feel are some of the elements that had to take place? I'll give a good example of this would be the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. This is my first example. Then we'll discuss, because everybody and their mother sat down and watched the Beatles and introduced the whole world to rock and roll. That to me it changed society, all of it, not just personally, but everybody. What do you think are some of the things that have changed society in entertainment? Let's start with you, Chris.
How did I know you're going to pick me first?
Because you're wearing pink.
And I got this T-shirt on the I Heart Geek store. It's very comfortable.
Hey, Chris, we're twinsies. I got my Geek Rockstar shirt on iHeartGeekShow.com.
Well, so did I.
My God. I know
Tommy has one too. She's just.
I'm just not wearing
it.
So the first thing I thought of when I was reviewing the script is late night talk shows kind of help.
Oh, yeah.
They're kind of the ones who take what's going on in the world and put it into funny bite-sized jokes, and they also help introduce like new actors and musical artists and causes to the world. For me growing up, the two shows that I personally related to the most that kind of like changed how I view the world and how I get my news is the Daily Show with Jon Stewart and the Colbert Report. Because before Jon Stewart took over, it was like a tabloid 90s talk show. And then as the world took a turn into the dark seriousness that we live in today over 20 years ago, well, not really dark, but you get what I'm saying. Like it ended up being better journalism than some of the network news people, because I feel like they were able to get right to the point. They didn't have to play nice by like any of the network like restrictions.
Now I want to agree, but I want to disagree with you on that one.
Yeah, I but for someone who's young like me,
and I'm not saying it didn't change the world. I'm not going to say it changed the world for the better, honestly, because as a satire show, they were amazing.
Yeah.
The problem is, because they got those incredible ratings, a lot of the serious news took that satire and said, well, we can throw our opinion into regular news. And that was kind of and that's part of, so yes, it did change the world. I'm not gonna say for the better.
In your opinion.
Yeah. But
that's opinion. That's news. Cronkite. God.
Which is gonna be a lot. Which is gonna be a lot of today, guys.
Yeah. But like even 20 years later, you can see in the current late night lineup, you can see the influence that Jon Stewart and Colbert's first show had, because people look for truth and meaning in whatever they watch and whatever they listen to. This doesn't have to be like a news show; it could be anything.
Yeah.
And if it's not relatable, people know. And I guess part of the reason why, I could relate to, I guess, what Colbert and Stewart and Conan and Letterman were saying is because they were able to relate to us, and they were able to take some of the more serious things going on in the world to make us laugh at just by showing some of the absurdity of it all.
Yeah.
So
make it more palatable to take the information in.
Yeah, because I don't know if you've been hiding under a rock the last year or two, but the world's kind of on fire right now.
Literally, the ocean was on fire not too long ago.
And one of the things that helped me get through the pandemic was tuning into my TV dad, Stephen Colbert, because there's just something calming and reassuring about him. And I think for a lot of people who are of my age, before 1990 or after 1990, I should say.
You're such a baby.
I know.
Well,
it's like we can relate to it because we kind of grew up with him. Because
we could even take that back 2 steps, and let's go back 1 step to Arsenio Hall.
Yeah,
who, let's be honest, that was all based on Arsenio Hall, what he did, and because he took nighttime TV and turned it on its ear, and everybody was watching Arsenio Hall for a long time. And then before that, you have your Carson, and those are I would say that's the 4 steps to where we have to what we have as far as the changes goes Carson to Arsenio to probably the Colbert, or not Colbert,
Conan
Stewart.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Carson he elevated
the art of it.
And then Letterman and, as much as I don't want to admit it, even Leno, I'm still mad at Jay Leno for what he did to Conan. But
I'm with you, Chris.
Like the early 80s and 90s, you saw another generational shift, and then Jon Stewart did his thing on Comedy Central, and Colbert,
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing essentially is we're talking about, so real life is happening, and news up until a point was really geared toward intellectuals, which felt alienating for the general public who didn't, a lot of times felt like they were speaking above them or even down to them. So when you have somebody who's an everyman who comes in, who can translate what's actually going on, give you their perspective on it, put it in language that is understandable and in pieces that are digestible, because otherwise the world is overwhelming, y'all. Mm-hmm. And it helps to have somebody to be a lens through which to help suss it out. Whether or not you agree with their point of view, you can at least take in the information and what's going on. Years ago, it was reported that most young people were getting their news from Stephen Colbert, likely because it was just too overwhelming to listen to the news. I mean, hell, I ain't in college anymore. And sometimes I'm like, nope, we are not turning on the news today. Not today, Satan. Not today.
Well, but that makes me miss the days of, growing up. The news happened between 6 and 7. You had your local news at 6 and your world news at 6:30 to 7. And that was it. And that was enough. Yeah. And I think that's kind of warped society, good or bad, but that still did change it. So tell me, what about you? What do you think is really involved in the changing of society in entertainment?
Well, I think at least for a lot of the things that are on my list is that there's entertainment that presents the world as we wish it were, and so gives us almost a vague roadmap of what we need to do in order to achieve that. So when you're talking about something like, I don't want to get into my top 5 yet, but I'll actually
your top 45. Yes, we know you.
My top 45. Yes, but I will give you some from my childhood for sure, which is Mr. Rogers.
Oh yeah,
which really presented something that was like, hey, this is the world that we could live in if we chose to behave in this way. Even the Brady Bunch, which was all about problem solving and
wasn't the Brady Bunch the first representation of a blended family on television? So
yeah,
I think so.
So it was also taking in elements of what is really happening in the world and what that could potentially be and how you could make that work. It presents solutions, and I think that appeals to everybody.
So what
That's
you're saying is
advertising work.
So what you're saying is for entertainment to change a society, it's got to show hope.
Yeah,
I think that kind of narrative. I like that, actually. I really like that.
Yeah, that's a pretty good distillation.
Well, and I want to throw on something else that I had, and this is controversial if this is entertainment or not, because yes, it's kind of news, but the moon landing. Yes, none of us were alive to see the moon landing. None of us are that old. But I know my parents saw it. I know I watched it on TV in school growing up, and that way was televised, and it literally brought the whole country together. The whole world together. Yes.
I mean,
everybody was waiting for it.
If you're talking news as entertainment, then you're talking also about Princess Di and Prince Charles getting married.
Yeah.
That sort of, I guess we can talk about
but these are all things of hopeful. These are all things that were hopeful.
Yeah.
Not the destroying ones, but those are the ones we like to remember is those hopeful things.
And we could kind of live vicariously through the experience.
Look at the train on that dress. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I remember hearing that as a kid. It meant nothing to me. But I was a boy.
You thought it was a choo-choo train.
I was like,
you were like, I don't see a train. Where's the conductor? Dang it.
They're British.
I don't like her caboose. Okay, go ahead.
What about you, Courtney?
She said.
Oh, ba-da-ba-doom.
It is what she said. I'm going to give 3 names.
Okay.
Thomas Edison.
Okay.
Giuseppe Marconi. And ostensibly Hedy Lamarr. Because these 3 people, Thomas Edison invented the movie camera. Without, we wouldn't have movies or moving pictures. Giuseppe Marconi and his partner invented radio in the way that we know it. And Hedy Lamarr ostensibly invented the internet. Because her work in World War II with radio waves and radar waves is what led the way to the internet. Without those 3 people and those 3 things, we wouldn't be sitting here on our iPhones videoing a show for people to listen to on the radio and on the internet.
That's a fact, Jack.
Okay.
There you go.
School us. Can you go into Hedy Lamarr a little bit more? Because I did not know this about her.
Yes, there's a great documentary on Netflix called Bombshell. If anybody's really interested, Hedy Lamarr, for those who don't know, was a very popular movie star in the 1930s and 40s. Considered one of the most beautiful women in the world. She was a German woman, and who was discovered and brought to Hollywood. She was also brilliant, massively brilliant, like math genius. And so when World War II hit, and I mean, she'd always done little experiments and she'd always done math stuff before, and a lot of times to kind of like supplement her income as a movie star. But when the World War II hit, she had an idea to use sonar and waves to locate ships in the Pacific and in the Atlantic to help the U.S. War Department. So she worked with some scientists, and they basically invented the internet. They invented wireless, is what they did.
Mhm.
But when she tried to patent it, the War Department confiscated everything and pretty much claimed it. And
Of course.
until recently, all but denied that she was actually the one that did it all, because she was Hedy Lamarr, the movie star. Of course, she couldn't, So,
And she was female.
Yeah, and she was female in the 40s. But it is pretty much accepted now, because they have all of her work and all of her notes, because it's all at the War Department. It's all been declassified now, and everybody's pretty much. While there were other people involved in the project, it's pretty much accepted that Hedy Lamarr invented wireless, which is what our internet is based on today.
Did not know that.
All because she wanted to help the war effort.
Cool.
Very cool. I have to actually check that one out.
Very cool.
Yeah, she's very interesting. She died broke. And they did some calculation of, if they had acknowledged that she was the inventor of this, she would be worth over $380 billion to this day.
Jeez.
So yeah,
Wow.
but no, check out she had a very, very interesting life. So if anybody's interested, it's called Bombshell.
Very good. Okay, so now let's take this to more of a personal level. Now, for something in entertainment to change you personally, what elements are we looking at that you can personally hit a little bit and say, this is what has to be there in order for it to change me? In a different way, let's change the order this time. Let's start with Satomi this time.
It has to make me feel. I mean, in a profound way. And the thing is, I can't answer that question really, really specifically, because let's face it, feelings are intangible.
Mhm.
But it has to give me all the feels. And I have had experiences with that in many ways, but it's why I do what I do. Because other things gave me the feels.
Very cool. Courtney, what about you?
It's like a couple of things. It's kind of like Satomi. It's hard to pinpoint exactly and to answer that succinctly, but I have to be able to see myself in it in some way or fashion. And then I also have to be inspired by it. I mean, there's always the things that I have that have always kind of affected me. It's always been like a light bulb moment where I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do, or that's how I should be looking at things. So it's like it's hard to quantify that simply, but yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it.
Chris?
Spoiler alert, I have the exact same opinions of Satomi and Courtney, but in all seriousness, like, I have to be able to feel something, and I have to be able to relate to it and see myself or be inspired by it, because if there's one thing that I'm a stickler about, it's truthfulness and honesty in what I'm watching, because you can tell when something is half-assed, bleep, sorry, or if it's like dishonest, or you'll get bored easily. You'll change the channel, you put the book down, you'll go to another app. But if it's engaging and if it speaks to your soul, then that for me that's what's the word I'm looking for? It's like, it's perfection. It's nirvana. It's wonderful just to I'm gonna get into this in my top 5, but there's a certain artist who I will not name yet, where I've seen him.
Was he drunk?
Where you've named him in every, and go back and watch other episodes, guys. I'm pretty sure you can figure out who Chris is talking about.
Don't worry, you'll know who it is by the end. But like, I've seen this particular artist 13 times, and every single time I've gone to one of his concerts, I leave so inspired and so hopeful about the world and being an artist and a musician that I just want to like kick ass and do good.
Yeah,
that's 2 asses.
I know. It's the coffee.
Okay, I'm going to agree with you guys, but I want to take it a step farther because, yes, I have to be inspired by whatever it is that I'm watching. But the most important thing to me, honestly, is I don't want to see all their tricks at one time. I want to know that there's a to be continued.
Interesting.
Because I want to, if I'm going to be inspired by something and follow something, I have to know that there's more, if that makes sense.
Now, here's a question though. Is it that you need to know that there's going to be a to be continued as far as like a sequel, or is it that the world that's been created is big enough that your own imagination can keep that going on?
That's exactly right. It's that even if there is no quote unquote sequel to whatever, it's I can still live in that world and I can still discover things about it. And I think that's what personally, if I'm going to be inspired by something, it has to have that. You know, you mentioned your musical artist that we'll talk about later. There's a bass player, Victor Wooten, greatest bass player on the planet. Every time I go see him play, I go practice because there's things that he does I have no idea how he does. I've watched thousands of hours of video, and every time it's still there's more stuff to it. So there's very much that to be continued feel, and I think that's important. And that's in order for me to commit, I have to know there's more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to our listener feedback.
And now, let's see what all of our geek rock stars have to say.
So for our listener feedback today, Courtney, take it away because you know I ain't going to read it.
I know. And he probably forgot what he asked you to, so I'm going to read that.
I feel ashamed.
Because it's true. On our listener feedback, Dub asked, hey, Dub, this is what you asked.
Okay.
Was what movie had touched you so deeply that it has changed your thinking or your actions? And we had a lot of great feedback. But again, like always, guys, sometimes I just can't read them all because there's just not enough time. But we love your feedback, so keep it coming. So first we have Desiree Houston. It's so hard to just pick a few, she says. I think we all pick things here and there throughout our lives that influence. I like that, Desiree. That's a great sentiment. For her, it was Dogma, Watchmen, V for Vendetta, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, one of my favorites, Split, The Matrix, Roots, The Shawshank Redemption. These are some that stand out for me at the moment. They're probably a little unconventional, but they made me think outside of perceived truths. They introduced us to ideas that made me pause and look in the mirror for a moment, that made me challenge my behaviors, habits, beliefs, and I will always appreciate that. I think that's a fantastic answer, Desiree. So good for you. Our very own Skeeta Thompson said, Book of Love, Never Ending Story, Dream a Little Dream. May sound weird, but Biodome and Dead Poet Society. He went on to tell us why. Right. And he went on to tell us why Biodome. Said, well, Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin for starters. I'm really not sure that's a plus, Skeeter, but okay.
It's a personal feel.
I know. He says the story teaches us it's easy to maintain perfection. The real test is finding a way to make something broken perfect again. I will probably never look at Biodome the same way again. Thanks, Skeeter. So there you have it. There is our listener feedback. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Real quick, we want to talk about, there's going to be a little screen going to pop up. It's going to tell you all about our contest we have going with our What If. Definitely get involved in this one. There's free stuff. And then we will go right from that into our main event.
Hey, Geek Rock Stars, it's contest time. We are continuing our 9-week coverage of What If. And during these What If episodes, you have the chance to win some super cool swag from iHeartGeek. Now, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to visit the @iHeartGeek Show on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, and make sure to comment. And while you're there, you also want to like and follow us as well so you can hear about all things iHeartGeek. You'll receive an entry for one comment on each channel per episode. So that's a total of 4 entries a week and 36 total by the end of our 9-week contest. So Good luck to you, Geek Rock Stars, and remember, keep on geeking on.
Now it's time for the main event.
Okay, so for today's main event, we asked our top 5 entertainment events-ish. That's a very broad topic that have changed either us or our world. And I wanted to leave it very vague so that we could go all over the place. And judging from everyone's top 5 list, we are going to do that a little bit. So I will start with mine, and my number 5 is a movie called Wayne's World. Now, why did that change my world, though? Seriously, I don't know that it so much changed the world, but it changed my world and most of my friends. That, kind of cheap, generic, I'm not saying this in a bad way, screenwriting they did, and it felt like a bunch of guys going out and having fun and doing what we were doing anyway. I mean, you can even put Clerks into this. It's the conversations that we were having put onto the screen, and that it made me relook at the way the entertainment is.
Well, and the Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh my gosh,
is pretty iconic.
And I honestly, I hate to admit, that was my first, entry into Bohemian Rhapsody. No, I knew Queen, but I did not know Bohemian Rhapsody. That moment in the car was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I want to know who still headbangs to that part today, to this very day. Yep, it's unanimous. We all do. And
I don't know if I can be your friend. I don't know if I can be your friend if you don't. It's just, you have to.
You still prep for it too. It's like, here it comes.
Yes, here it goes.
Yeah. But no, I think that was important because of the simplicity of it. And I know that sounds weird, but the simplicity of it is what was really important with it. Chris, what is your number 5, sir?
My number 5 is any of George Carlin's or Robin Williams' HBO stand-up comedy specials.
The 7 dirty words.
Yeah, I was going to get to that. Because on a world's viewpoint, when George Carlin uttered the 7 words you can't say on television, that changed comedy because he just basically said, F it, I'm doing this because it's funny. And I was probably way too young when I watched some of these stand-up specials, but just the way they, helped. They were kind of like every guys, more like George Carlin was, but like we could relate to them. We could relate to what was going on in the world, and they made us forget, and it made me laugh.
Yeah,
because, like I've never the 2002 Robin Williams special that he did on Broadway. Wow, I was way too young to watch that, but I remember just howling with laughter with like my dad had it on. We were just watching it, and he let me watch it at a very young age. I'm like, okay, this is really funny. And, it kind of influenced how I act and try to be funny on stage. So
you have to wonder with an artist like Robin Williams, I mean, and the tragedy that surrounded him, that if there is like a kind of, and I'm going to say his name properly pronounced, you all, is Van Gogh, but we know him as Van Gogh. But, when you talk about artists who sort of, deal with depression or deal with mental illness or mental challenges, if that actually is more that they can see more of the world and more of humanity, and that's why they're able to give us a window onto ourselves, that we are too tightly wound to be able to catch the glimpse. So they part the curtain for us. I always think, whenever I think about Robin Williams, I always think about that, because he's remarkable and yet struggled so much.
Yeah.
I kind of wish Carlin and Williams were still alive today, because they would have had a field day with
oh my God,
the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if everyone would like, but especially Carlin would have to say, let's be honest. he wasn't the most politically correct person. But I will say this with Carlin. What I loved with Carlin, he could cuss up a storm and he was still sounded like the most intelligent guy in the room.
Yeah.
That is its own art, and you know,
Yep.
God bless him, that was just amazing.
And Robin Williams was just insane.
Oh jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the
Yeah,
best way.
he was better on the coke. Let's be honest, but
Aw.
he
No, I wouldn't
was.
agree. I would not
No.
agree with that.
I
would not
I
agree
love
with
his
that.
'80s stuff when he was just, "Rah!" you know.
One little fun fact before I close out my, because I've talked way too long. George Carlin was Mr. Conductor on the Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yep.
Yes, he
television
was.
series. So I grew
And
up
then
with
it
him
was
at a very young age.
Then it was Ringo Starr.
Yep.
It was, yeah.
Creepy. Okay, Courtney, what is your number 5?
They're two, but they both kind of go together. So it's I Love Lucy
Mm-hmm.
and the Dick Van Dyke Show, both of which changed how a sitcom. They both changed the television landscape, when especially
Absolutely.
Lucy, because it was a show headlined basically by a woman, but she wasn't the perfect 50s housewife. Like, she was always messing up.
mess,
And I mean,
yeah.
and she was probably one of the first female comedians who could pull that kind of stuff off. And so, yeah. And then the Dick Van Dyke Show as well, because, you know, Laura was that 60s housewife who was a little bit, she wasn't the perfect housewife. And then Dick Van Dyke was just this bumbling goof that
And
everybody
chemistry
just
they
loved.
had was just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, the chemistry was just so perfect. And I mean, he talks about that in his biography, one of his biographies, and it's lovely to read. But yeah, they both of those shows changed how sitcoms, and I mean, they're still informing sitcoms today, because I mean, look at WandaVision. I mean, it's those first two episodes, direct homage to both of those shows.
Yeah.
So,
well, there is, in any sitcom, there is at least a little foundation of Dick Van Dyke, I Love Lucy, that era. I mean, if there has to be. I mean, no matter what the sitcom is based on. So tell me, what is your number 5?
I also have a few that are sort of dovetailed into number 5, and they all have to do with MTV. So we mentioned at the top, Video Killed the Radio Star, first video on MTV. I remember watching it. We were so excited. It changed how, you know, we had been a largely oral society when it came to music. And then suddenly we add this visual element, which absolutely, I mean, I don't know about you, but I could like picture stuff in my brain. I mean, growing up on Fantasia, I could, you know, picture things in my brain when music was happening, but suddenly you had visuals to go with it, which then goes into a massive game changer, which was Michael Jackson's Thriller.
Yeah.
Which turned the music video into a movie, storytelling film medium, which then of course paved the way for something like Beyonce's Lemonade. So you're talking about like groundbreaking music video events that have happened over the years. Which, by the way, I'm going to dovetail one other on there, also paved the way for the Fortnite events, where you're looking at live concerts done in virtual space in the metaverse, which is kind of where it looks like we might be heading. So, you know, I think, were we to do this episode in 10 years, we literally might be talking about a specific Fortnite concert that brought the world into the metaverse, you know. And
I want to dovetail one more on there, and that is Aha, Take On Me. That did more for animation, I think, than Disney has done. And that's high praise to Disney. That opened a lot of eyes to what animation
that's a reach.
I don't think so. I really don't think it is.
Because
I appreciate it, but that's a reach.
It hasn't been done.
From live action. It had been done.
Oh, with Mr. Limpet and I think Roger Rabbit was after that.
Yeah, Mr.
And then
Limpet
Bed Knobs and Broomstick.
But it was very adult. And it was very
it was.
And not like manga adult, but like adult. Like it's a story and it's cool.
There was actually, I don't know if I want to say this, but there is a film of a not child nature called
Oh.
Fritz the Cat that
Oh,
did the same thing.
Yeah.
Do not Google that, children. And anybody
Oh,
Adults,
no.
definitely Google that.
adults Google it. Anybody under the age of 15, don't Google that.
I'm
But
scared.
yeah,
They're all gonna do it now.
I know. The minute
Fritz-
I said it.
So don't
You
go
can
to
cut-
Fritz
you can-
the cat.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
should
but it did
totally
the
go to
same
Fritz
thing.
the cat.
It did the same thing. It was that live action and animation thing because, you know, and then we got things like Roger Rabbit and then we got things like Cool World.
We don't talk about that one. Ugh.
I like that movie.
Really?
I
We'll
don't
talk
know.
about that after because that's like completely
I
off.
don't know what that is.
Okay, so we're on number 4 now. My number 4 goes from a world changer to a me changer, and that is Woodstock, the event, changed the world. Not necessarily because it brought peace and love, but because of that created the mega concert venue that is the only way you will see concerts anymore.
And we got Hendrix's.
And you got Hendrix's. Well, that wasn't the
doing
first
the
time
star-
he did that either, though.
Yeah, but it's.
But that's when everyone found it.
Yeah, I mean, that's when it launched Hendrix's version of the Star Spangled Banner to the world.
Yeah, and also a lot of people say that was the death of the hippie movement. Is that because that's when it all became commercial? Don't care. I loved it. I mean, but and on a personal level, when I discovered the records with Skeeter when we were I think in 7th grade, and we listened to the whole thing on LP with on vinyl. It was cool.
I miss vinyl.
Absolutely, we would just sit mesmerized, listen to all of it. That's where I discovered the Star Spangled Banner by Jimi Hendrix and all that, and it changed. I want to be a musician because of this. You know, that was and not necessarily I didn't want to be a bass player because of it, but I want to be a musician because of it. And that's a big difference. It touched me. So yeah. Okay, Chris, what is your number 4, sir?
My number 4 is The Sopranos. Because before The Sopranos...
Oh no, that's a tenor. That's a
Different one. I think you were a countertenor there. Woo.
Yeah.
I was just terrible right there.
Agreed.
Only I could sing in a high voice. How you doing? Before The Sopranos, you didn't have any TV shows this gritty, this real. But then after The Sopranos came on, you had shows like Breaking Bad, Dexter, Mad Men, all of these dark, gritty, dramatic stories that otherwise wouldn't be made if it wasn't for Tony Soprano and his North Jersey crew with all the gabagool and the pasta. You wouldn't have some of these other iconic shows. And
now I'm hungry.
Yeah, me too.
Me
I,
too.
I want some gabagool now. But and plus it introduced the world to New Jersey and how pretty it actually is, Dub. It doesn't smell that bad.
When you got to use the qualifier, it doesn't smell that bad. That's a heck of a qualifier. Go ahead.
It also introduced like a new kind of form of storytelling that we've gotten used to.
But
Where,
you're forgetting about the greatest New Jersey story, and that's Toxic Waste Avenger. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh my
I had to
goodness!
do that.
What am
Sorry.
I going
Shot
to do
fired.
with you, Deb? What am I going to do with you?
Tolerate him. That's what we do.
But don't worry, folks. Dub's going to get another chance at one of my top 2.
Yes, he is.
Crap on New Jersey.
I love you. I love you, Jersey. I do.
but without The Sopranos, I think TV would be a much, much different and boring place.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Courtney, what is your number 4?
I'm like you. It's something that changed and then it changed me. So things like, I guess more like Aaron Spelling in general, but like things like Dynasty and Falcon Crest, both which were created, they changed the primetime landscape because there weren't any primetime. Basically, these were soap operas and like things like Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
So they changed the primetime landscape. And then by the time I was old enough, we got Beverly Hills 90210. And I just remember being a high school kid, very young high school. I think it was like freshman, just so excited to see these 30-year-olds playing high school kids. Like, I want to have a high school like that, so, and then, you get older, you're like, ooh, I shouldn't have been watching that stuff at 14. But yeah, I mean, those kinds of shows changed, and Aaron Spelling, for the most part, because he was a producer of most of them, changed the primetime landscape of TV.
True. That's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
A whole
Yeah,
different
you're
market.
reminding me of all those shows. You're reminding me of all those shows that I don't want to admit changed me at the time, because they present a words are escaping me right now, but a
Idealized
template
image.
as to how life is supposed to be lived at that age, which was not how life was supposed to be lived at that age. And I made decisions based around what I thought based on those shows.
Oh,
I'm embarrassed to say it, but not based on the shows,
Clothing
but because
choices.
being influenced. Oh, many clothing choices. Many clothing choices.
I stand by
clothing
my choices.
There's still pictures of that, and I just wish they would go away.
Yeah.
So tell me, what is your number 4?
So my number 4, it's funny, we're talking about this, and now I almost want to put something else in there, but I'm going to make it my number 3. My number 4 is, I'm going to go back to things that changed the industry that I love so much, and that is Jurassic Park. Because it was the first time. Now, we had seen little hints in things like Terminator of what CG could do, but it was always sort of this, and The Abyss, there were always sort of this like manipulation of reality. And suddenly Jurassic Park, I know for a lot of the kids living today, they're like, yeah, whatever. But for us at the time, we had never seen fully realized non-existent creatures rendered so that they were real. I mean, literally, I remember sitting in a crowded theater in the front row, because that was all the seats that were left, craning my head up, and that first freaking Brachiosaurus or Brontosaurus, comes onto screen, and the entire theater gasped, because this was not part of our reality. And it completely changed filmmaking. What is now commonplace is because of
that
Jurassic Park and this rebel computer graphics artist who was told that it was impossible and don't even bother, decided to go ahead and work on it and slip it in to a little test where, of course, Spielberg lost his mind and history was made.
Let me throw a plug in. What is it? The movies that made us on Netflix, they have the Jurassic Park one, and they tell that story, and it is, it's just beautiful.
Yep.
Okay, so we're up to number 3, and my number 3 is very important for anybody that's on our show that loves the Marvel universe, that anything. So these are 3 things I put into one, and that is the Superman movie, Super Friends, the cartoon, and Batman 89. That to me, that's the holy trilogy of my generation and loving comic books and comic book movies and wanting more of this. If they didn't have that, the thirst would not have been there for the Marvel universe, because all 3 of these movies and TV shows were just so, everybody loved them. And I don't know anybody that didn't watch all 3 of these. I did not know a single person. And that's pretty amazing. You can't say that about any movie nowadays. But yes, I enjoyed those a lot. But I think those definitely changed the world. They changed me. I would not have ever picked up a comic book if I wouldn't have had Super Friends. Because it was just
Sorry.
So good.
I was doing the Super Friends.
Okay. Chris, what is your number 3?
If I could add to your thing before I tell my number 3.
Absolutely.
For my generation, 2008 was a very good year, because you had Iron Man and The Dark Knight, which set the standard for superhero movies. But my number 3...
It was a very good year.
I was about to sing that. Dang it.
So Tommy gets points. My number 3, and this one's very close to my heart because I've had a history with this particular Disney film, Beauty and the Beast, 1991. The second of the Disney Renaissance films, but it's the one that kind of, pushed it into that upper echelon of these next 10 years are going to be iconic, because, you have the ballroom scene in Beauty and the Beast, the 91 movie, the original So, listeners and viewers, when I talk about Beauty and the Beast, I'm only talking about the one true Beauty and the Beast, not the 2017
animated
live action
one.
Yeah. Yeah.
This movie was perfect. It's a perfect Disney movie, and you can even argue that the Broadway musical version also changed the world, because that was the first show that you could really bring the whole family to.
Mhm.
And it exposed a lot of people to Broadway and to musicals.
Mhm.
I know it exposed me to it because my dad worked on the show. But like, I love this movie, and ask any Disney fan, and I guarantee you this will be in their top 10.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's say it's not necessarily the first show that you could bring the whole family to, because Broadway was well known for shows you could bring the whole family to, but it was one that was incredibly accessible to
Yeah.
every member of the family.
Mhm.
So, you know, especially, sorry, we got into this with the musical episode, but especially because so many community productions of other shows had turned musical theater into sort of this cheesy kind of place.
Mhm.
And Beauty and the Beast like brought it back to, no, everybody can watch this, and this can be amazing, and everybody can have a great time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it can't be understated, the ballroom scene is another
Yeah.
moment that changed the way that they make movies. The
Mm-hmm.
CGI with the sweeping camera, and it didn't look like a computer. It didn't look like you're playing Virtual Fighter. It looked like, wow, this is just, it's a part of it. And all
Mhm.
these angles they were making changed.
Mhm.
If there's no Beauty and the Beast, there is no Matrix. You know,
And
I mean,
I can say that before the pandemic shut everything down, my fiance and I ate in that very ballroom on my birthday, and we had the great stuff. It was delicious. It really was.
Well, and I mean,
Okay.
we talked about it a little bit before we started filming it. That movie was the first full-length animated feature to be nominated for a Best Picture Oscar.
yeah.
But that wouldn't be there without the mermaid. But that's just me. That's my
But
favorite.
I don't think any of this would be there without Snow White, because that was the
Oh,
first.
absolutely.
Fact.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sorry
yeah.
if I stole that from anyone's.
And none of that
Oh,
would be
no.
there without Steamboat Willie.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's true. Did you know
Mhm.
that when Snow White came out, they were given a special Oscar? It had the Oscar statuette with
And then
seven
the little ones. If you watch the movie Saving Mr. Banks, where Tom Hanks plays Walt Disney,
Mhm.
behind him in the office scenes is the Snow White honorary
cool.
Oscar with all the 7 little dwarf
Nice.
Oscars next to it.
Oh,
Okay, Courtney, what is your number 3?
So we talked about the mermaid. I'm gonna change it up real quick.
I can't imagine.
Well, you mentioned the Beatles on Ed Sullivan being a huge event, but
Yeah.
you forgot who came first. That was Elvis. Elvis
Yes.
on Ed Sullivan, and
Above
the
the waist
Beatles have
only, kids.
Elvis. The Beatles have always said that Elvis was one of their greatest influences. So Elvis being on that was a phenomenon, but he actually is the one that ushered in rock and roll.
Fair enough.
All shook up.
Uh-huh.
Zatomi?
I'm just going to mention how hard it is to come up with the top 5, just because there are so many things. There are just so many things. But for now, I'm going to say for my 3 is going to be the film Frida, which starring Selma Hayek
I love
and
that movie.
directed by Julie Taymor. Yes, it is a remarkable film. I actually cut my hair to match Frida's for a while after she had cut her hair. It visually stunning. Julie Taymor, who had been known for her theatrical eye, brought that incredibly just beautiful imagery to the film, and it translated beautifully. You've got Alfred Molina, Selma Hayek with these beautiful performances, but it was really the story of a woman who lived her life persevering through the challenges that she had. She had a terrible accident when she was very, very young, and goes through her recovery. But because Julie used things like claymation to and Frida's artwork to sort of create these visual gut punches throughout. It did affect me in the sense of realizing how important what I do is to me. And it really spoke to lessons of perseverance that my mother always taught me. That you just always, you keep going, and it's how you make it in a business like this. And it's also how you make it in life, dealing with life. I just found that the film sort of encapsulated that so beautifully, that by the end she's lived this unbelievable and rich life that you're like, yeah, okay, if I ended my life and was like, could have that satisfaction, I would be happy. I would die happy.
Very good. I've never seen it. I probably need to.
You got it. Oh, that's so good.
It's just
so good.
Just from a visual level, as Satomi was saying, it's just beautiful visually, because a lot of the scenes, she literally recreates Frida's artwork with humans and with it's colorful, and just visually it's beautiful.
And she uses it to further the story too, which is what is so striking. It's not just like, pastiche, here's your little artwork moment. It's like, no, it forcibly moves forward the story, and it's remarkable.
Cool. Okay, so moving on to my number 2, and that is the first time on MTV that I watched Smells Like Teen Spirit. Literally changed my life. There was a lot in my life, let's be honest. That was the age that everything changes for me. I mean, everything. That moment in time when that came out is literally like kind of the fact where I feel like my life kind of began, of who I am instead of, just being a kid. But I felt like I had a voice, and I understood what you always heard kids in the 60s. Yeah, well, I hear rock and roll. It's my voice. I'm like, oh, that's stupid. That happened when that video came out to me. I felt like I have a voice. This is amazing. So yeah, Smells Like Teen Spirit. Mr. Giorgetti, what is your number 2?
Oh, I can't wait to tell you what my number 2 is. Are you ready? Get ready, because I have gone to the Church of Rock and Roll 13 times, where I've basked in the glory of St. Bruce Springsteen and his E Street Band.
Is that where he got the DUI?
No, that was at Sandy Hook.
Oh, okay. That made it even worse. Okay, go ahead.
So Bruce Springsteen is my favorite rock band, and I'm a little biased because I'm from New Jersey, where it's law to pray to the 3 patron saints, which are Joe Pesci, James Gandolfini, and Bruce Springsteen. But every time I've gone to one of his 4-hour rock and roll love fests, I come out of it a changed person. The power of music is powerful. And like,
that was deep.
Yeah, I know. I realized it as it came out of my mouth. But like
he's overwhelmed. Leave him alone.
I've seen him play Born to Run in its entirety twice. I've seen him play The Darkness on the Edge of Town in its entirety. The River twice. And, when I go to other non-Springsteen concerts, they play for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I'm always wanting more. Yet with Springsteen, he goes for 4.5 hours, and I still want more. He could party all night long, and it's like, it's the greatest concert you'll ever go to. All you need to do is attend the Bruce Springsteen Church of Rock and Roll once, and he will deliver the most powerful, life-changing rock and roll sermon.
Put in earplugs, and you're good.
Ever hear? Oh, listen! You can think he's a terrible singer or whatnot, because he sounds like this every time he sings. But like,
sounds like Cher. Go ahead. Yeah.
But
that's them some fighting words right there, buddy.
But honestly, though, like every time when I go see Bruce. Every time
you're on a first name basis.
Yeah, we are.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm done.
No, I did this to myself. I knew full well what I was getting into. when I uttered the name Bruce Springsteen. But whatever your opinion is of him, everyone should go to one of his concerts, and you will come out of it so uplifted. Because every time I've gone to a Bruce Springsteen concert, I've kind of been like in a funk. And after just sitting there for 4 hours listening to all this awesome music, I'm like, okay, the world's all right. Because he writes very personal, intimate songs that cut. Like there have been moments at every single one of his concerts where I've cried because he gets it.
Yeah.
He gets it. And yeah, I love Bruce. You'll never change my mind. He'll never change my mind.
He's no Dave Matthews, but he's okay. Oh, I had to throw that one in there. Courtney, what is your number 2?
First off, I will accept no Cher slander at all.
It was Dub. It wasn't me.
I know, Chris, you're fine. I'm talking to Dub. If you do it again, I will have to hurt you. Anyways, Cher's my queen. Okay, so number 2. Now we're venturing into things that changed Courtney's life. So my number 2 is the movie All the President's Men, with Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford, and it's about the breaking of the Watergate Nixon story. That movie made me want to be a writer, which I am today, because it just spoke to me on so many levels, because their job was to tell the truth as writers, and they kept fighting no matter what. No matter roadblocks they got to, they were on the story. They were going to make the story happen. They were going to write the story and tell the world this story. And it just, it made me really solidify the idea for me that I need to be a writer so I can tell stories too. I'm a different kind of writer, but it's still
fair enough.
Telling stories to the world.
So tell me, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is one that both changed the world and changed me, and that is Star Wars. We are talking now
nothing but
Star
Wars.
This is something that brought in a philosophy of life.
Mm-hmm.
People created actual churches around it. Do or not do. There is no try. Just again, it's what we were talking about earlier. It's the world as we would like it to be. Now, not with the Empire and all of that, but just the philosophy of the Jedi. And again, we're talking about another story of perseverance. So yeah.
Okay, and I hate going through that one so fast because that's Star Wars. That's
I know, but we did an entire Patreon series on it.
Yes,
so
we did.
Check it out.
You should go back
there.
and check. Every single episode is covered. Now, my number 1 is a movie that I've mentioned several times called Pump Up the Volume. If there is no Pump Up the Volume, there is no podcast. You just watch the stinking movie. You'll understand all about me if you watch that movie. I've talked about it before. So moving on, Chris, what is your number 1?
My number 1 is WrestleMania. Here's why. Before the 1980s, wrestling in North America, or redneck anime as I like to call it, was very territorial. Then Vince McMahon bought up all the territories, and he turned pro wrestling into this, you must watch this.
Yeah.
Because, in the 80s, you got Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage.
Yeah, brother.
Rowdy,
can you dig it? Roddy
Piper.
Piper. Bruno, you have all,
Junkyard Dog.
He made pro wrestling commercial. He made it acceptable. He made it cool. And then the Attitude Era happened.
And he made it into
90s.
a Saturday morning cartoon.
He did.
I missed that cartoon. You can't find it anywhere.
And having been to 4 WrestleManias in person, they're by far the best sports entertainment spectacles you'll ever see, because there's so much pomp and grandeur into it. It's like, even pop star, it's an event everyone wants to be a part of. Like Shaq was in it, Floyd Money Mayweather was in it at one time or year. They had Mickey Rourke at one of them. I was that
Stephen Amell.
Stephen Amell.
It's like WWE
in his Arrow costume.
His Arrow costume. And as much as I poo-poo WWE on my podcast, George Eddie on Ice. They really, it's the best wrestling show I've been to. ever, just because of how big it is.
Yeah.
And after since '85, everyone loves WrestleMania. Well, most people like WrestleMania, but when you think of pro wrestling, you think of WrestleMania and Hulk Hogan and The Rock and The Undertaker and blah 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 blah. I could go on for hours. Trust me.
Yeah, you're trying to right now. I see that.
I'm sorry. Oh wait, I'm being told I have to be quiet now because we're almost out of time. I will do that.
Courtney, what is your number one?
This is another personal one for me. It's the Phantom of the Opera musical, and I'm not kissing Satomi or Chris's butt. I was 14 years old. We went to LA. It was the very first professional production of something I'd ever seen. And it blew my little 14-year-old mind, who had been playing in theater for a couple of years, but it wasn't until that moment and I saw that show that I realized theater was going to play a truly integral part in my life. And here I am 175 years later and still acting and directing because of Phantom of the Opera. So there we go.
Soundtrack was a big deal for me too. I was blown away by it as a junior high kid, and it was that was my gateway into what little Broadway that I do know. But so tell me, what is your number one?
My number one is also very personal to me, and it's also the reason that I am in musical theater, and that is Sunday in the Park with George. Which I saw the PBS airing of Mandy Patinkin, Bernadette Peters, Brent Spiner, y'all, Data from Star Trek. It was, I talk about like the less than fully realized productions that sometimes happen that give musical theater a bad rap, and it's kind of it was my perception of most musical theater until I saw Sunday in the Park with George, and suddenly realized that it could be an incredible vessel for real emotion, real storytelling, deep. It's that thing that we were talking about earlier, that intangible thing, where I just felt everything. I felt the longing that I have as an artist. I felt the longing that I have as a female who loves to love. And the feeling of ostracization, I can't speak, in society, that everybody goes through, even when you're not, just that, that mental feeling that you go through. And it was all expressed through my favorite musical theater composer's music, Stephen Sondheim, and literally finished watching it and decided that this is what I had to do. So that was an earth-shattering entertainment event for me.
Very cool. Wow. So thank you all for joining me today. This was a fun episode. Make sure you like and comment and do our contest and go to our Patreon and do all the stuff. And did
you pay extra for the .com on the website?
We paid extra for the .com. www.iheartgeekshow.com.
Buy shirts.
You threw me off. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yes, buy a shirt because it's awesome. And until next time, I'm Dub. I'm here with Chris. I'm here with Satomi. I'm here with Courtney. Keep on geeking on, guys.
You have been listening to the latest episode of the iHeart Geek Show. Make sure you visit our website at www.iheartgeekshow.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you check us out on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And keep on geeking on to all of you geek rock stars.